The case of Layla Hassan shocked Dubai's elite. A wealthy housewife trapped in a loveless marriage, a powerful businessman husband named Karim Hassan, and the mysterious Sheikh Omar al-Rashid whose charm turned deadly. What began as a secret affair ended in betrayal, silence, and a death that remains unsolved to this day. Stay tuned as we uncover the hidden truths behind this dark story of power, passion, and murder. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, make sure to support my channel by subscribing and staying active. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Layla Hassan was born into privilege, but it was her marriage to Karim Hassan that placed her in the glittering heart of Dubai's elite. Their mansion stood on the iconic Palm Jumeirah, a home so extravagant it seemed more like a museum than a place to live. Polished marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, and every corner displayed symbols of wealth. Rare art pieces, gold accents, and sprawling windows that opened to the turquoise Arabian Gulf. To the outside world, Layla was the picture of success. She wore designer gowns, hosted elegant dinners, and arrived at social events in chauffeured luxury cars. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated dream, filled with sunsets over infinity pools and diamond-studded wrists. But behind the filters and lavish settings, her reality was far less enchanting. Karim was respected, even feared, in business circles, but he was a husband more devoted to deals and profits than to his wife. Their marriage was a transaction in many ways, a union that looked perfect on the surface but lacked intimacy and warmth. Layla's days were often long and quiet, filled with shopping trips, spa visits, and endless scrolling through social media. Surrounded by wealth yet starved for affection, she felt invisible in the very life others envied. The silence of their mansion echoed louder than any argument could. She longed for something real, something that would make her heart race and remind her she was alive. The more Karim grew distant, the more restless Layla became. In the stillness of luxury, a dangerous hunger began to build within her. She didn't know it yet, but that craving for passion would soon lead her far beyond the safety of her glass-walled world, drawing her into secrets and shadows she could never escape. It was during one of Dubai's glittering nights that Layla's life shifted in a way she could never have predicted. She attended a gala held at a five-star hotel, the kind of event where diamonds sparkled brighter than the chandeliers, and the air was thick with perfume, ambition, and carefully guarded secrets. Among the crowd of businessmen, royals, and celebrities, her eyes fell upon Sheikh Omar al-Rashid. He was a man whose presence filled the room before he even spoke. Older than Layla, yet effortlessly magnetic, he carried an aura of authority that silenced whispers wherever he walked. Women looked at him with fascination, men with a mixture of respect and fear. For Layla, trapped in the monotony of a loveless marriage, his attention was intoxicating. Their first encounters were subtle, concealed behind polite exchanges and fleeting glances. But Omar was not the kind of man to leave things to chance. His interest was deliberate, calculated, and soon undeniable. He invited Layla into a world she had only glimpsed from a distance. One where private villas in the desert became hidden sanctuaries and late-night drives turned into stolen hours of passion. The thrill of secrecy ignited something inside her, a fire she thought had long gone cold. Each meeting left her craving more, and with every step deeper into Omar's orbit, she felt both alive and trapped at the same time. What Layla didn't yet understand was that Omar's affection came at a cost. His power was not limited to boardrooms and palaces. It extended into the shadows where silence was bought, loyalty was demanded, and betrayal was punished. To Omar, Layla was not just a woman he desired. She was a possession he intended to control. And in surrendering to the excitement of the affair, she unknowingly stepped into a dangerous game she could never truly win. Layla's secret world began to grow heavier with each passing week. At first, the affair had been thrilling, a series of stolen moments that seemed invisible to anyone else. But soon, the cracks began to show. Expensive jewelry appeared suddenly on her dresser, gifts from Omar that Karim could not remember buying. Servants whispered in corners about her late-night outings, her unexplained absences, and the way she seemed to glow with a kind of energy that had nothing to do with her husband. The walls of her perfect home, once a sanctuary, started to feel like they were closing in on her. Every step down the marble hallways carried the risk of exposure. Omar, for all his charm, was not a man accustomed to being questioned. His affection quickly twisted into obsession. He demanded she answer his calls immediately, scolded her for even the smallest delays, and reminded her of the power he held over her life. What had started as passion soon felt like a chain. Layla realized that while Omar gave her the excitement Kareem never could, he also carried a darkness she had underestimated. He spoke of his influence often, not as a boast, but as a warning. If she ever betrayed him, he could erase her reputation, her family, even her very existence in Dubai's tight-knit elite. Despite the danger, Layla couldn't pull herself away. Each meeting was a gamble, each gift a reminder of her double life. She knew the servants were noticing. She knew the whispers would reach Kareem eventually. But the fear of losing Omar's intoxicating hold was greater than the fear of discovery. Layla lived in a balance between ecstasy and dread, blind to how close her world was to shattering completely. Kareem Hassan had built his empire on caution, calculation, and an unyielding instinct to protect his reputation. For years, he had dismissed Layla's restless behavior as the typical boredom of a wealthy wife. But as her absences grew longer and her explanations thinner, suspicion began to gnaw at him. At first, he ignored it, convincing himself that she simply needed distraction, perhaps more freedom. Yet the evidence was too glaring to overlook. Jewelry boxes filled with rare stones he had never purchased. Designer handbags arriving at the house without receipts. A sudden glow in her demeanor that he knew had nothing to do with him. Kareem was not a man to be made a fool of, and in his circles, scandal was a weapon deadlier than any knife. Quietly, he began to watch her. He noted the calls she took behind closed doors, the moments she slipped away during social gatherings, the careful lies she thought he wouldn't notice. He did not confront her, not yet. Instead, he hired a private investigator, a discreet man who owed Kareem more than one favor. Within weeks, the truth arrived in photographs and reports that confirmed his worst fears. His wife was involved with Sheikh Omar al-Rashid. The revelation left Kareem stunned, but not broken. Rage burned within him, yet he understood the danger of his situation. To expose the affair would be to challenge a man with more power and influence than he could fight. The Sheikh's name alone could crush his businesses and end his standing in society. Kareem realized he was cornered, but he was no stranger to patience. If his wife had betrayed him and the Sheikh had humiliated him, he would not strike recklessly. He began to plan, slowly and silently, knowing that one mistake could destroy everything he had built. The night everything unraveled was unremarkable at first glance, yet beneath the calm exterior, a storm was brewing. Layla had arranged another secret meeting with Omar, choosing a villa just outside Dubai where they thought no one would find them. She believed her husband was away tending to late business, unaware that Kareem already knew her every move. That evening, Kareem followed her discreetly, his car keeping a careful distance as she disappeared into the city's outskirts. What happened inside the villa remains a puzzle of speculation and fragments of truth, pieced together only through reports and whispers. Neighbors later told investigators they heard raised voices echoing across the quiet night, followed by a heavy silence that felt unnatural. No one dared interfere, and by morning, tragedy had struck. Layla was discovered lying lifeless on the villa's cold marble floor. There were no obvious signs of struggle, no forced entry, nothing that pointed clearly to an intruder. Her expensive jewelry was still on her, untouched. To those who first saw the scene, it looked less like a robbery and more like a carefully planned silencing. The Sheikh was nowhere to be found. His presence in the villa that night was whispered about, but never officially recorded. Kareem, on the other hand, insisted he had been at home the entire evening, supported by staff who claimed to have seen him. The contradiction was chilling. Had Kareem orchestrated his wife's death out of revenge, or had Omar ensured her silence to protect his reputation? The villa, once a safe hideaway for forbidden love, now stood as the stage of betrayal and death. For investigators, every piece of evidence only deepened the mystery, leaving them with more questions than answers. From the moment Layla's death was reported, the investigation was marked by unease. Officially, her passing was labeled as suspicious, but the tone of the authorities suggested caution rather than urgency. Detectives collected evidence quietly, avoiding public attention, as if the case itself was too dangerous to touch directly. Behind closed doors, whispers of Sheikh Omar's involvement circulated among police and officials, but his name was carefully omitted from any formal documents. No witness dared to step forward, and no one wanted to be the person who challenged a man of such influence. The atmosphere around the case became one of silence and intimidation. Journalists who tried to probe deeper were quickly discouraged, stories pulled before they could be printed. Even those close to Layla noticed the shift. Friends who had once gossiped freely about her affair suddenly refused to speak, terrified of being implicated. Every path the investigators tried to follow seemed blocked by invisible barriers, as though an unseen hand was guiding the entire process. Meanwhile, Omar himself remained untouched. Rumors swirled that he had quietly arranged the erasure of any trace linking him to the villa that night. Others believed he had bought the silence of anyone who might testify. Layla's family pleaded for justice, but their voices were drowned in the weight of political and social power pressing down on the case. In the official narrative, her death was reduced to a tragedy without resolution, a story best left alone. For Karim, this silence worked in his favor. His own name never appeared in reports as a suspect, his alibi carefully maintained by loyal staff. To the outside world, he was the grieving husband, but privately, he understood what had happened. In Dubai, power determined truth, and his wife's death had been buried beneath it. As months passed, the case surrounding Layla's death slipped quietly into the background of Dubai's fast-moving world. What should have been a storm of scandal became a faint murmur, carefully managed and gradually erased from public memory. The most striking shift was the sudden disappearance of Sheikh Omar al-Rashid from public view. A man once seen at every high-profile event, photographed in magazines, and paraded as a figure of power, now existed only in rumor. Some claimed he had left the country under the guise of business abroad, while others whispered that he still resided in Dubai, protected within walls of privilege, his movements shielded from scrutiny. His absence only deepened the mystery, leaving people to wonder whether he had orchestrated his own vanishing act or if higher powers had hidden him away. Karim, on the other hand, thrived. Strangely, doors that had long been closed to him began to open with ease. Contracts he had chased for years were suddenly awarded to his companies. Partnerships with government-linked enterprises appeared almost effortlessly, as if unseen strings were being pulled on his behalf. To those watching closely, it seemed more than coincidence. The timing was too neat. His wife's death, Omar's disappearance, and Karim's sudden rise in wealth and influence. It was as though a quiet agreement had been struck, one that kept Karim loyal and Omar untouchable. Within society circles, speculation was rampant, though spoken only in hushed tones. Some believed Karim had been rewarded for his silence, compensated for his humiliation with power and profit. Others thought he had orchestrated Layla's death himself, using Omar as a convenient shadow to conceal his own revenge. Yet no one dared speak publicly. Fear held their tongues, and with time, Layla's death became just another buried story in a city that never slowed down. Years have now passed since the night Layla Hassan was found lifeless on the marble floor of the villa, but her story lingers like an unfinished sentence. Officially, her case remains unsolved, a file tucked away with little explanation and no accountability. To those who knew her, the unanswered questions are unbearable. Was she a victim of her husband's vengeance, caught in the trap of his wounded pride? Or was she silenced by Sheikh Omar, a man too powerful to risk the exposure of his secrets? The truth remains suspended in shadows, guarded by people who have everything to lose if it ever comes to light. Layla's family has never received closure. They were left with vague reports, conflicting timelines, and a sense that the system cared more about protecting reputations than uncovering justice. Each attempt to press for answers was met with polite dismissal or cold silence. Meanwhile, Dubai moved forward, glittering and untouchable, its skyline growing taller, while Layla's memory was pushed lower into obscurity. Her death became a cautionary tale whispered among women in private gatherings, a reminder of the dangers that come when desire collides with power. Karim Hassan remains a wealthy figure, his influence stronger than ever. He rarely speaks of Layla, presenting himself as a man who endured tragedy but rebuilt with resilience. His polished image leaves little room for suspicion, yet those who look closely cannot ignore how his fortunes rose almost immediately after her death. As for Sheikh Omar, his name has all but vanished from public records, as though he never existed at all. What remains is the haunting reality that in a city where money and status dictate truth, one woman's desperate search for love became her undoing. Layla's story endures not through justice, but through the silence that followed her death.